You ready, Jerry?
Yeah.
Boom. And we are live with another episode of the Brown Water Banter podcast. My name is Jared Seymour.
My name is Joey Cates.
It is Joey Cates. And in the studio, man, we got a good one lined up for y'all. We have Emma and Jen from Gulf Coast Vietnamese Narratives. We're going to be talking about Vietnamese culture, how they got to the Gulf Coast, what it's been like from the 1970s all the way to today. I think we're in for a lot of laughs. And you may not think it by looking at these two ladies here, but it may not be safe for work. They gave us a warning right out of the gate that it might go off the rails a little bit.
They were giving us street names and everything else before. So
let's see where this goes, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. But before we do that, we want to thank the people that keep the lights on for us over here at the Brown Water Studio. Dr. Robbie Williams over at Southern Magnolia Smiles, man. If you're looking for a great local dentist, you can look them up on the socials at Southern Magnolia Smiles on Facebook and Instagram. They're right there, like I said, Washington Avenue. So 2025 is the year to brush your teeth. So give them a call at 228-215-1202 and book that consultation and tell them Brown Water sent you. Taylor and Cox Law Firm. If you're looking for a great local attorney, we highly recommend them. It's our buddy Tyler right here. They've been practicing law on the Gulf Coast for over 30 years. They specialize in felonies, misdemeanors, DUI, family law, divorce, child custody. If you need somebody that's going to fight for you, they operate in Jackson County, George County, and Greene County. So give them a call, book the consultation, tell them that you heard about them from Brown Water Banter. That's 228-696-0111. And it is it's May 2nd as we record this. It's beach bod season. So if you're still stuck on the couch and you haven't started that workout regimen that you planned back in January,
too late. You'll be fat on the beach.
Hit up Forever Young Men and Women's Health and let them get you fully optimized, man. Their motto is they're bringing medicine, health, and exercise together to help men and women live their best life. You book a consultation with them. Kendrick's going to do some lab work on you, see if you're vitamin deficient or if you're hormone deficient. He specializes in testosterone replacement for both men and women. Believe it or not, go check out their Facebook page, Forever Young Men and Women's Health. He's got a lot of great informational videos out there. He can break it down for you and explain to you what's going on with your body and get you optimized, man. So you can call him at 228-363-6623. And again, tell him that Brown Water sent you. So Joey's still sharing it out over there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you stood no chance at winning that one.
I'm done.
So anyway, ladies, I appreciate y'all making it down to the studio today. I know you went through a lot getting here today from what? Coming from Jackson?
From Jackson, yeah, outside of Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful Jackson, Mississippi.
That's right.
It's beautiful this time of year.
Yeah, if you've ever made that drive, it is not fun.
No.
So let's dive right into it. So let's talk about first how the two of you met to get this whole thing started.
So Jen and I actually grew up in proximity from each other, and we always knew of each other, but we didn't hang out in the same circle.
Okay, I didn't have that luxury with Joey. I grew up with him. I've known him for a long time.
Yeah, we always saw each other every time we went out in a group of friends and everything. We followed each other on MySpace and on
MySpace.
Zanga.
Whoa, I didn't even know y'all was old enough for MySpace.
Yes, and then later on, ventured into like Tumblr, and we actually didn't connect until both, we had losses in our life. I had a brother that passed from COVID and then another brother that passed from a head injury. And then Jen had lost her younger brother from a drowning. And not too long after that, her dad fell off a shrimp boat and passed away.
God,
so all of this traumatic stuff, I decided to become a grief coach whenever I went to go travel CRNA up in Missouri. And then I reached out to Jen. I was like, hey, I'm learning how to be a grief coach. Can I just, work with you so I can practice how to talk to people?
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a few sessions online while I was in Missouri. And I said, hey, I'm coming into town. What was it, April, I think, that I stopped by? April.
Mm-hmm. Was that your first interaction with her other than what you said, like haven't seen her on social media and same circles? You were just like, hey, I need a grief counselor person to practice on it. It's going to be you. Is that how that went down?
It was like very short brush by.
Yes,
like there was a few times where we did run into each other in person. Actually, I think that was our first
interaction.
Yeah.
Like she came to my church. She's Buddhist. I don't know what the hell she was doing in the Vietnamese Baptist church.
I'm everywhere.
She came there to eat food.
She's placing her bets on every single one. What works out? I don't know. Right?
So I saw her at church, but we never actually interacted. Mm-hmm. And then so we actually met at the park, and my husband was there. The kids were there. My husband was trying to keep the kids distracted in the park, and we did a grief session. And then I was asking her about some of the stuff about her upbringing. Of course, we have childhood trauma from our parents being still, suffering from PTSD.
Oh, okay.
And we're like making humor out of it. We're laughing at it. We're like, remember that one time, like our parents beat us for this? Ha 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 ha. Like,
right.
And
probably the same. It's probably identical, right?
I think that transcends.
I was like, it's like
race.
You live my life, heifer. But yeah. And I was like, you know what? I was like, we have so much history in America. I was like, we need to start a Vietnamese museum down here in Biloxi. I was like, because people don't even know that there's Vietnamese people in Mississippi. Because whenever I went travel to Missouri, the
Yeah.
first thing that people ask me in the operating room is, hey, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Mississippi. And they're like, why do you sound like that?
What's wrong with you?
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm cornbread Asian.
Yes. You don't know nothing about it. You don't know nothing about it. Yeah.
And I was like, there's actually a large Vietnamese community on the coast of Mississippi.
Mhm.
And they're like, why? And I was like, hold on.
Yeah, slow down.
Let me teach you about Mississippi culture real quick,
Right,
101,
right,
okay?
Right.
And I told them about the seafood industry. I was like, so a lot of our family, were fishermen in Vietnam.
Yes.
So when they came to America, they don't have an education. A lot of them are illiterate. Like my dad's illiterate, can't read and write. And my mom, didn't finish high school in Vietnam. There was a war going on. The government purposely blew up so people could not be educated.
Right.
So they blew up the schools.
Control mechanism.
Exactly. So whenever my parents come up here, they started off in Massachusetts first. And then they heard by word of mouth, they're like, there is a booming seafood industry. And all these Vietnamese people who are coming over here as refugees are thriving. So my dad was like, okay, well, I'm going to save up money for 7 years. So he saved up money for 7 years and came down and bought a shrimp boat in Tampa, Florida, and then drove his shrimp boat for like 48 hours all the way to Pascagoula.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was
7 years.
How did they
Saved
end
up
up in
money.
Massachusetts? I mean, I'm just
So
wondering.
he was sponsored by a non-denomination church called College Church,
Right.
and the whole church sponsored him, but one person was pretty much in charge of my parents. He was an attorney, Doug Dagger, and I still keep in touch with him. I had the pleasure of flying up there and actually meeting him and getting to know him too.
Wow.
Yeah. So my dad worked as a janitor. My mom worked in a plastic factory back when America still had factories.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah.
my brothers were raised up there. And then my parents had my oldest brother in Vietnam. My middle brother was born in the Thailand refugee camp before they were sponsored. And then my third brother was born in Massachusetts. So
Wow. Explain the sponsor, because I know a lot of people don't understand what that is.
So sponsorship is where you have to have somebody who's responsible for you when you come. You can't just come to America and not have direction. So
Right.
they sponsored my parents. They brought my parents here. That my parents had an apartment. They had a job set up for them. They learned how to pay taxes. They bought their first house. They bought their first vehicle, and it was kind of like a mentor.
Okay.
An American
Right.
mentor. And then they usually pick someone who's very, someone who has their shit together.
Right.
So there was an attorney. So he had his shit together.
Absolutely.
And he was like, this is how you become an American. This is how you, and my mom,
I know. Look,
Yeah.
my mom was like, what about welfare? He's like, no.
No. Nice.
Yeah.
He's like, no. My mom was like, I only had it for like 4 months and he made me get off of it and get a job. And I was like, oh yeah. So he told us how to become an American, how to actually contribute.
Mhm.
So they were there for 7 years and they saved up money and then they bought their shrimp boat in cash in Tampa.
Damn.
Yes.
And brought it all the way over here.
Yeah. So he drove it all the way to Pascagoula. And then when they got here, they heard from other Vietnamese people. They're like, hey, they got housing projects up in Biloxi
Right.
where you could apply
Uh-huh.
and we can get subsidized housing. So my parents lived in Pascagoula until they were bumped up on the application list or wait list.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's how the Vietnamese got the projects. So a lot of us grew up off of Oak Street and
Yeah.
Division Street.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where all my family's
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I'm from the hood, baby.
from the
Yeah.
hood.
Yeah.
I was like, we fight dudes down here.
we see my parents. We were fancy. They moved from Cobbett Street
Uh-huh.
over the bay to
Yeah.
St. Martin area. That
Yeah.
was like you'd made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
highfalutin.
Highfalutin.
Yeah.
Hair
We
flip.
ain't hanging out. We ain't hanging out with y'all.
That's right. We done moved up in the world. And this was
Yeah.
I even know like some of my older family members, they described when you go like the D'Iberville area right
Yeah.
there, Lemoyne
Mhm.
Boulevard, that was the country back in the day.
North Biloxi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
North Biloxi, but it was,
Biloxi, yeah.
and I've seen old photos
Yeah.
of Lemoyne. It was cow fields on both
Oh,
sides.
yeah, yeah.
You know, it was
Yeah.
Fields.
it was not what you see today.
Yeah, now you still see heifers, but they ain't the same
It's
kind of
not the
heifers.
same.
Yeah, they ain't the same kind of cow.
That's right.
English and English, man.
Yeah. Did your dad have any prior experience shrimping? Was he a
So
fisherman?
He worked
there?
on he worked on a fishing boat for my mom's uncle, which is my grandfather's brother. And that's how
Okay.
he met my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
he's like
yeah.
a we call a deckhand.
Yeah,
on
so
a shrimp
he's
boat?
been a deckhand since he was 10 years old. So my dad was, he was living on the streets and, he just came from a broken family. So he was like, I want to start working right away. And
Mhm.
so he was, first he was like a street vendor person where he was selling like corn and ice cream and all
Yeah,
that.
hustling.
And then finally he was like, I want to be on the shrimp boat because I feel like that's a skill that I can learn and carry it on.
Right.
So he went and worked as a deckhand, and that's what he started smoking his first cigarette at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Because he put like 20 cigarettes in his mouth, and he'd be lighting it all up like this and handing it to each deckhand, bringing them their coffee and their beer.
Yeah.
So
The green horn.
That was back when it was good for you.
Yeah.
Remember? That's what they
and
said
you
back
look gangster and
then.
badass.
Yes, yeah.
70s and 80s cigarettes were cool.
Different. It's a whole different world.
Vitamins.
I laugh every time a Netflix show puts it up there. It's like nudity, violence, murder, smoking. I'm like, really? Like, I know it's not good, but we put it in that category.
Yeah,
Okay,
movies
cool.
and smoking, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Well, that's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah.
What about your parents, real quick? Let's get that.
Similar to Emma's story, but my parents were sponsored by a Baptist church, and then through that Baptist church, they started in California, and then immediately they had people from their village, from the same village in Vietnam, to sponsor them to come to Biloxi. So they eventually moved from Cali and straight to Biloxi.
Okay.
And when my mom first came to Biloxi, she was thinking, oh, it's like city-like, but she's driving through the highway, be like, why is there so many trees?
Yeah.
She's like, why are we went from another jungle to a forest?
Yeah.
So my parents end up, my dad worked on the shrimp boats with a few other shrimpers, and then my mom was in the oyster factories in the shrimp factory.
Hard work.
So she
Down here.
Yeah.
down here.
What did they do prior to that? Over Vietnam.
In Vietnam, same thing. So my dad was a shrimper. They pretty much fish for shrimp, and then my mom pretty much was a descaler for fish. So
Okay.
have you seen her like descale a
She
fish?
fast with them
She's
hands.
Yeah.
I bet she can shut some oysters.
Yeah.
100%.
And then now they transitioned from my dad wanted to move on land, because when you're on a shrimp boat, you could be out there for like 6 months at a time, especially if you have a freezer boat.
Yeah.
So he wanted to move on land. So they eventually explored some different option. Another village folk that my dad connected with, he also owned a craft factory, which was the Bowie family.
I went to school with a Bowie.
Yeah. So my dad used that model and opened his own craft factory. So I also want to give credit to the Bowie family for setting up that model. Otherwise, my mom wouldn't be in operation today. So they do have a craft factory now and still in operation. But yeah, they switched from
Your parents?
Yeah, my
Okay.
parents.
Nice.
Here. Yep, in
So they're
Biloxi.
crabbing and picking and packing and doing everything.
Everything by hand.
Jennifer
all
Lee
manual.
Seafood, y'all.
Where's it at?
Oak Street. You know where Lee Bakery is?
Yeah.
Behind there.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we've been there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we've been there before.
You gotta tell them how they started.
Day.
Yeah.
You gotta tell you how it started.
So it started in our backyard, literally on let's see, it's Pearl Street, so 2 streets away from Howard Avenue. They pretty much just ground up my dad. Actually, he's pretty much all around pretty much round scooter in terms of flight skills. So he built that factory from ground up.
Okay, yeah. So he's a jack of all trades.
Jack
That's
of
how
all
he is.
trades. Yeah. So
We'll light it up for you, jack of all trades.
I was like, I'm losing my word.
Right.
But we had that craft factory in our backyard. So literally just imagine this house, and then you have craft factory in the backyard. We had it for at least 2 to 3 years, and then shortly after, we had some agents stopping by our house.
The bids.
Yeah. Y'all ever heard about permits? Like that, right?
Yes,
You're like, what?
Regulations.
I don't have time for permits. I'm working. Get out of here.
Yeah.
So obviously, my parents, their English weren't proficient, so they sent us out.
The kids, Asian kid with bow ties coming out.
Yeah.
So we saw some suited men out there, and then me and my brother looked at each other. We're like, "Uh-oh, I think we're in trouble." And then, we opened the window. We didn't go outside. We opened the window. We're like, "What do you want?" They're like, "So you have a craft factory in your backyard?" I was like, "Obviously, you don't have a backyard."
You smell it?
Be like, "You can't do that." We're like, "Oh, so is that what you want us to tell our parents?" They're like, "Yes, so you need to shut down." And we're like, "Oh," and then they asked, "Oh, who works there?" And we just got really quiet.
Like, 4 kids with like blisters on the fingers. Not us.
Not us.
That's from the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So my parents ended up having to shut down for 1.5 years and start relocating. So they had to search for land. So they ended up finding a spot on Division and Oak.
Okay.
And then start from building ground up again.
Right. Getting all the permits right, doing it the right way or whatever you
Yeah.
want to say. So, okay. That's
because there was a few other families that did the same thing. So
right.
Yeah.
they had to remodel.
Well, coming from Vietnam, they're like, we're working. Like, we don't have, what do you mean? We don't have a government back there. Like,
Yeah. You know, and then their thing is they couldn't speak English.
Right.
And then they can't read English. Like her mom, you know, like didn't finish beyond like 2nd or 3rd grade. So how do they know how to apply for permits? It's not because they were sitting here, you know what I'm saying? And then if they didn't have someone who bridged it for them, and their kids are like 1st or 2nd grade level, you know, like we're just learning how to speak English, and our parents are like, hurry up, read this government document for us.
Right.
No.
Joey couldn't do that now.
I teach it at high school, and it's still to this day. Like I have people who come in all languages that know no English, and it's up to their kids to decipher everything I said home. And I'm like, wow, that's tough.
That's a different perspective, I'm sure, for y'all, is to have that weight on your shoulder. Did you experience it the same way? I'm thinking maybe you had it differently than you because you had the older brothers, or no?
No. Well, my brothers did help, but then eventually, like my brothers went to college.
Okay.
And then
so they're gone, and it's
me.
just you. Yeah.
And then, you know, even when my brothers died, like I pretty much planned the entire funeral by myself.
Right.
And then still now that my brothers passed, like it's me by myself helping my parents with their doctor appointments. And you know, thank God for my chart, because I'd be going there pretending like my mom, like, hey, doctor, like, my high blood pressure medicine now. Does it sound like her?
That's good.
Doctor with an A.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's really good.
I'm texting in Asian.
Yeah. And by the way, they told us we could laugh at all these jokes before we went live, so nobody's canceling.
So yeah.
So I want to go back to the sponsorship stuff.
Yeah.
So when everybody was leaving Vietnam, what did the people, the attorney, and I forget who sponsored
Baptist Church.
the Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Did they have to get whatever? What's the term that was the U.S. government already pulling Vietnamese people in, or was it the churches and stuff that was doing that? When it comes to, I know it's not green card. What was it that allowed them to come into the country?
There's a Refugee Act.
There you go, something like that.
1975, and I believe it stopped at 1995.
Okay, because it's like a crisis situation in the country.
Yes. So there was 2 acts. There was one called the Refugee Act. I don't know the full name, but Refugee Act in 1975, and they were like, all right, let's get them out. And there's 2 phases. So people think that we all left at the same time, but we did not.
Okay.
So there are people that left in 1975 who were involved with the military, and that was phase 2 or stage 1, and they left by the airplane. And then there's people like me and Jen's parents where they fled after 1976 on the boat.
Okay.
So our parents are the boat people, and usually they were farmers, they were fishermen, they were the uneducated. So we were the ghetto ones that left. We're
they were stacked on the boat too.
Yeah,
as many as you could fit.
Yeah. So you know, like, so we were the boat people, and we were uneducated. We had no connections, and so when they arrived to America, they came literally with nothing. And then a lot of them brought gold bars, whatever. They sold all their business. They're like, we got to get out of this country.
Right.
So they sold their business. They sold their boats. They sold whatever they could, turned it into gold, and they brought it with them on the boat. If they were lucky, they didn't get robbed by Thai pirates.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So my mom was robbed by Thai pirates. My mom was 8 months pregnant with my middle brother, Froggy, the one that you went to school with.
Yes.
And then my oldest brother was a year old in her arms. So the night that they escaped, the Viet Cong shot at them. Yeah, they were shooting at them, and then they got on the boat, and then they left.
Right.
And my dad knew the way to Thailand. They're like, I know the way to go. We just got to get close enough to where we can get to the refugee camp. But on the way, the Thai pirates knew that all these Vietnamese people, the boat people, had all these valuables with them.
Right.
So they would intercept, and they were like, you know, you have to get through us in order. But then when they did that, they took your gold. They raped the women. They kidnapped the kids. And so my oldest brother actually got kidnapped. So they took my brother out of my mom's arms. And then they got him on the boat. And then they actually went so far away, my mom couldn't even see the boat anymore. And my mom was like crying.
It's terrible.
Lots of PTSD.
I bet.
And then she's like, she wants to jump off the boat and kill herself. She's like, I don't want to live with my, my firstborn and blah, blah, blah. And my dad's like shaking the shit out of her. I was like, wake up. You still got another baby inside of you. We got to get to America. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, the boat turned around. And then there was, I guess, one nice Thai pirate. You know, they couldn't speak the same language.
Yeah.
He had a heart.
He had a heart. And he turned around and he gave my oldest brother back. And then so my brother, we always joked around. I was like, they should have never handed your ass back.
My question was going to be, knowing your personality, your comedy, I know you looked at him once or twice and was like, even the pirates wouldn't beat you.
Even the
worst president ever.
Even the Thai pirates didn't want your ass. Like,
how many times did you throw that out? A lot.
Yeah, all the damn time.
That's good stuff.
So was your parents like open about that to y'all? I'm sure not when you're like 3, but like as you got older, like what was it like for them to have to? I guess if somebody's shooting at you, it's an easier decision to make, right? But then I'm assuming other people stayed.
Yeah, other people stayed. So my grandparents stayed. All of my mom and dad's siblings stayed.
Okay.
They were like, we're not leaving because, my grandfather was actually imprisoned in the concentration re-education camp.
Okay.
So if you had any sympathy towards a republic and helped the Americans or helped anyone escape, they put you into this communist re-education camp. And I think he was in there for like 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So my mom was like, hey, I'm getting out of here. And she went to go visit her dad one last time, but she didn't tell him because, all the Viet Cong was surrounding them. She was like, it will be a while.
Everywhere.
Yeah. She was like, it'll be a while until I see you, Dad. And he didn't realize she was leaving. So when she left, she's like, I don't even know if I'm going to die if I want to see my family anymore. So to make that decision to leave the only country you've ever known and where you're raised and born and all your family behind, I mean, that's a major decision.
That's crazy. That's crazy to even think about.
Yeah.
And go into a country where you can't speak, you don't know the language, don't know the currency, don't know anything that's going on.
Well,
just jump off the boat and be like, here I am.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Or like you said, like don't even know every step of the way. Like your dad, I know how to get to Thailand.
Yeah.
And then we'll figure it out after that, right? Like you're
with
going.
Your 1-year-old.
And a pregnant wife, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't even like driving without GPS somewhere right now in America, right? Like that's like,
her mom's walking through the daggum jungle, 8 months pregnant, like miles and miles.
That's what I'm saying. So did they ever tell y'all like what the mindset difference was between, say, your grandpa or their brothers and sisters that stayed versus them? How are they looking at it different, or why they decided like now is the time?
So my mom said that her siblings a lot of them were too young.
Okay.
And then
so that makes sense.
And then my grandmother was like, there's like 9 of them. She was like, I can't have all of my kids dying. So she was like, and I don't want my oldest daughter to leave. And then my mom actually was not supposed to go. It was only supposed to be my dad. My grandparents were just like, if anybody's gonna die, it's gonna be my son-in-law.
Right. Like you go ahead and see if you can figure it out, and send us a letter in the mail when you get
a postcard.
Yeah.
And then so my mom was supposed to go down to the boat and say bye to my dad. And her ass jumped on the boat with him.
With your
like,
brothers.
I'm not leaving.
Brother and brother.
Yeah, with my brothers. Yeah. And then my mom was like, I love you. I'd rather us die together. I was like, okay, The Notebook from Vietnam.
We need to start working on that script tonight.
The Vietnamese Notebook.
Yeah.
So she jumps on this boat.
Yeah.
She's just mad in love and like jumps on this boat.
So when they figured when her ass didn't come home, they're like, her ass done went to America. She done hopscotched over there.
Damn, you poor dad. Because now, how do you ever win an argument after that? I jumped on a boat and could have died with you. You win no more arguments at home when that's the case, right?
Yeah. So the funniest part. So I'm writing a memoir, and it's about it starts off about my brothers passing away, but it goes into our childhood.
Yes.
So part of the memoir talks about this part, and it's the funny part. It's traumatic for my mom. But so when they got to the Thailand refugee camp, my mom gave birth to my brother. It was inside of the tent, a medical tent. They had volunteers from France and stuff, and they were speaking French or whatever, and they delivered Froggy. And so my mom was breastfeeding, and then so they had rations of food that the refugee camp would hand out to everybody, but it wasn't enough. They give you like noodles, maybe like a few bags of vegetables, and that was it. And you would run out as a family of 4. So my mom was breastfeeding, and people came up to her and was like, hey, can we have your breast milk because we're still hungry? And then she saw this as a hustler opportunity.
Open up shop. Open up shop.
She was hand expressing into a cup.
Yeah.
And then she was slinging her breast milk.
Yeah, hey, bro.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Entrepreneurship is everywhere.
So bag of noodles. So she was a hustler from day one.
Right.
So I was like, so she was slinging her breast milk. I was like, before, what was it? Khalees started my milkshakes bringing all the boys to the yard.
Your mama was bringing all the boys.
She was bringing all the refugees to the yard.
That's right.
And
I gotta get my ass out of here.
Better than the noodles, but
Damn.
So she was slinging the breast milk in survival. And then that hustler mentality, that survival mentality. And she's telling me this story, as a kid. I'm like a 7-year-old in the back seat. She's like, I want to sell breast milk, for, in the refugee camp. And
I like how you do it in the accent.
Yeah, I have to do it. I was like, I want to sell breast milk. We were so hungry, and everybody came to me. So I was feeding the entire refugee camp. I was like, damn, Mom. I was like, your titties like saving lives. Save the tits.
Damn. Yeah. That's good.
Get scanned for breast cancer, everybody.
That's good. That's good shit. Yeah. Foreign land, don't speak the language, show up. What you said, turn their stuff into gold, turn all their assets into gold
and
to try to.
Thai Pirates took it all. So
then they really had nothing.
They were going to take that gold, come to America, and open up businesses.
Right.
and they couldn't even do that. So
jumped off the boat, had to get a
yeah,
had to get a job, had to do something, had to start grinding right off the bat.
So she used her her breast milk. She was that's white gold, man.
Whatever you got to do.
So we know her mom and dad opened up to her. Did your mom and dad open up to you the same way?
No. Unfortunately, my mom, when she was at the Thai camp, she lost a lot of weight, so she ended up looking like a boy. So when she was on the boat, when the Thai pirates came on the boat, she ended up slapping like oil on her, so she looked even more like a boy.
Right.
She was trying to look disgusting.
Did she cut her hair short too before she left?
Correct.
A lot of women did. They did cut their hair short so they look like men.
Right. So they wouldn't get taken and raped and all that.
Even their daughters, they'll shave the daughter's head bald.
Yeah. That's smart. Smart move.
Yeah.
So she cut her hair short. She still had the same short haircut, but she slapped oil everywhere. She told me she was so skinny. She was flat chested. She lost so much weight that her eyes were like big and wide.
Bulging.
Bony. Mm-hmm. And then every time she went to the nursing office, the nurses translate it to the other nurse to ask my mom, can you ask that lady to look away? Every time she looks at me, I'm scared.
Oh, wow.
That's how skinny she was.
That's not good. That wasn't a good nurse.
She was skinny.
She was skinny. So it's an opposite story of Emma's mom slinging,
Yes, breast milk for dollars. Yeah.
Whereas my mom, she had to gain back her weight. But on the other hand, she was eating like 6 cups of rice for a meal.
Right.
Like if you imagine 6 cups of rice, that's like a whole pot of rice by herself.
Right.
But she wasn't getting any of that weight back. Until she came over to America when they started giving her like vitamins and things like that to gain back her weight.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn, that's nuts. Yeah. That is. That's
well, it's crazy because a lot of people, I don't know if parents feel crazy about opening up to their kids, but it seems like your parents opened up and told the whole story.
Sure they want y'all to know, right? And also so you could appreciate what we have.
What you got now.
There was no therapy. So I think there was no Vietnamese people in America before 1975. You see what I'm saying? So there was no therapy. There was no person who was a Vietnamese person who was a therapist.
Right.
So we were pretty much, that was their therapy session when they divulged to their children. And if we were ever ungrateful, I remember one time in 3rd grade, I came home and I had to do long division homework, and I couldn't figure it out because I'm a calculator Asian, and my mama was like, and I was like, Mom, I can't figure this out. She was like, when I was in Vietnam, I pray for homework.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you'll pray your answer.
Yeah, take it. Yeah. Y'all had it bad then, right? Like you couldn't complain about anything.
I couldn't complain about anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, I remember I worked as a nurse. I did a 16-hour shift in the ICU, and I came home talking about my feet hurt. And my mom like, oh yeah, like your feet hurt.
I walked in the jungle 8 months pregnant. I got robbed.
Oh yeah, your feet hurt. I used to climb mango tree and pick mangoes off the tree and sell mangoes to feed your brother. I'm like, well, there ain't no mango tree in Mississippi, Mom.
No.
It was like anytime we complained, it was the story. Here comes the story.
Yeah.
And then they get here to Biloxi. Your dad had the boat.
Yes.
Correct. He had already bought the boat. He hadn't had the boat yet. Started with the seafood, crabs in the backyard.
Yeah.
And then, just like what always happens, it's like a certain group of people move into an area and they're typically not accepted.
Yes.
Right. So then now they have to deal with that.
So our family it was a little bit different for us. The stage 1 Vietnamese that came over, they were the ones who kind of went through a little bit more. I mean, we all did, but I feel like they were the fresh ones who were pushed into the environment, and which On Bu, who is on the National Geographic magazine, she came to Biloxi in 1976.
Okay.
So she moved to West End Homes housing projects.
So question then. So a lot of them did come straight to Biloxi. Didn't have these other Massachusetts or California.
They would go through Oklahoma City.
Okay. Because
Oklahoma City had a chicken plant. It had a chicken plant. So they actually sponsored the Vietnamese refugees, so they would have workers.
Like a work visa.
Almost. Yeah. And then when they got there, they're like, this shit is ghetto as hell.
Right,
I don't want to smell chicken shit all day.
Right.
Yeah. So they're
Vietnam was better. I'm going back. Right? No, I'm getting out of here.
They're like, what? There's shrimp in this street?
Right.
Mississippi is hot as hell down here. We going. Yeah. So On Bu, her experience, she told me that when they first moved into the West End homes, they were the only Vietnamese family, and it was predominantly Black. And her older brothers were getting jumped. Their houses were getting robbed. People just didn't know. And people didn't know. They've never seen Vietnamese people before. This is the first time they're seeing them. So they had a really difficult time, and their parents had to to gather money and save it up. And then they bought a house in Division Street. So they had to get out of the projects. And then my parents came in, I want to say 1987. Even though we came to America, they fled in 1978. They got to America in 1980. They were in Massachusetts until 1987. And then they came over here.
Okay. Well, I guess what my question is too, is that was Biloxi the destination to begin with, whether that means the federal government was trying to siphon people down here or the churches that were sponsoring, or did it happen naturally? Was it a natural occurrence?
They just heard the
word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Predominantly, people did not start here. A lot of people started in Minnesota, cold states. States where we should not be. Cold ass states.
We ain't got the skin right.
I ain't never seen a damn snowflake till my ass was in Massachusetts. So Minnesota, Nebraska, I mean, they're sticking us in all these cold states where, you know, like we don't belong. And then we up there shivering like a little chihuahua, like, we got to go somewhere hot as hell and humid, like the tropical weather. So, and then they start gravitating down here, like, it's a skill set that we know. We can shuck some damn oysters.
Oh, yeah. Shrimp.
We can peel some damn shrimp. It's what we know. And I was like, we ain't got to speak English to shuck no oysters. And then that's whenever they figured out we can buy shrimp boats. So I would say Mississippi, we did have issues. I don't know if you ever seen the article where there was a bomb that was planted on one of the shrimp boats.
Say that again.
There was a bomb, like a
bomb.
Yeah.
Maybe I remember hearing.
Yes.
It was.
That would have been in the 80s.
It was alleged.
Okay.
So we don't know if it was,
I'm guessing it's the white shrimpers that were.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
they were in front. Yeah. We don't want these Asian kids.
Check our jobs. Right.
And then if you looked at the National Geographic magazine, the article has.
There's a dog in the studio.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's an old dog.
It's all right.
So there was a bumper sticker that said, "Save the shrimping industry, get rid of the Vietnamese."
Okay.
But not everybody felt that way. And I hate that, you know, sometimes the news station and
they're going to run with it.
They're going to run with it.
It's still happening today.
Yeah, they're going to pick one thing that's negative and they're going to be like, we're in Mississippi, and they're going to run it on a National Geographic, right?
Correct.
Because what they don't know is when Richard Galat couldn't find workers, because, you know, before, you know, there was
Croatians,
and before that there was
Polish. I was going to get into that part
Yugoslavians,
of it.
And then now that they're second, third generation now, they're like, you know, us, we don't want to work in the factories anymore. So that he couldn't find workers because ain't nobody want to shut for $2 an hour.
That's right.
Then he heard there's Vietnamese refugees in New Orleans and they can't find work. So he drove in a white van over there.
Let me get him.
Creepy white van.
Yeah.
Like he was going to the Home Depot, but he was in New Orleans.
Yep.
And he picked up the Vietnamese. There was an outreach program with Richard Galat and Arnie Galat, I believe.
Okay.
Big Arnie. Yeah,
Big Arnie, the grandfather of the Arnie now. Yeah. So, and then they drove over to New Orleans and they picked them up like 4:00 in the morning, brought them back to the factory, and then they were, you know, shucking oysters, and we were fast and we were good, and we wanted to work.
I was appreciative.
Yeah, that $2 an hour is better than no $1 an hour.
Y'all are more efficient than anything we've had.
Yeah.
Shuck oysters that quick.
And then if you look at old Richard Galat's videos, he said the Vietnamese saved the seafood industry because literally they were going to have to shut down the factories if they couldn't find workers.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't process things if you didn't have processors. And so he told the Vietnamese, which is a few of the families that I interviewed who's in the exhibit right now, he told them, he was like, hey, I can help y'all get housing in the projects here if you want to move your family. And those families are Vietnamese Catholics. They have like 16 brothers and sisters.
They need a house.
They're like,
quick.
We got
we got workers.
Yeah.
and those 16 brothers and sisters had like 8 kids each.
Yeah.
So
you got a whole army of oyster shuckers at your beck and call.
He actually facilitated like getting them into the housing, you know, authority for the housing projects, got us into mainly the East End Home, Bayou Augusta. That's where my family was, West End Home. And that's how the Vietnamese came and lived in the housing projects.
Right.
And then, so when we lived in there, our parents just walked to the Gloss, like by Boomtown. And then there was a few other factories, you know, in Point Cadet. So they would just walk to work.
Right.
So, I mean, they had workers after workers, and it would be like a 2-bedroom house with like 12 people living in there.
Well, I mean, every time you see Little China in New York and Little Italy in New York, how was that growing up around, you know, all the people who were just brought here to do the same thing your parents were?
Everyone looks like us, so we never questioned who we were.
Right.
I knew that I was Vietnamese from the day that I set foot, you know, outside Biloxi Regional Hospital.
Right.
I knew I was Vietnamese. I was never confused. But my daughter, she's raised in Gluckstadt, Mississippi. She came home from kindergarten. She said, "Mama, we Spanish?" I'm like, "No, little heifer, we ain't Spanish. Why the hell you think we Spanish?"
We dark, but we ain't that dark.
Yeah. I'm like, I thought we eat different kind of rice.
Yeah.
And and then that was kind of like an aha moment for me. And I was like, I need to start talking about, our past, how our grandparents, I bought her a damn globe. And I was like, this is America. And I spun it and I was like, this is where grandma and grandpa's from in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I had to explain to her because her school only has 4 Vietnamese kids.
And where y'all at?
We're in Gluckstadt, Mississippi. So outside of Madison, Mississippi.
Oh, you fancy.
Yeah, y'all can come back to D'Iberville.
What you doing up there?
Yeah, we still doing a bunch of
No. Come on back home. Come on back home.
Yeah. I had a patient the other day. I don't know if you saw my Facebook. And I was getting ready to put him to sleep. And he looked at me. He is like, damn, you fine. He's like, you from China? I was like, oh.
Here we go, white boy. Here we go. Right.
He wasn't a white dude.
Oh, okay. I assume.
I was like,
you stereotype her stereotype.
I stereotype my people. Well, that's some shit we would say.
And I started pushing that propofol, which is, the milk of amnesia, where I knocked him out. I like, no, I'm from Biloxi. Bye, Felicia. And I pushed that drug in and he fell asleep.
Yeah.
And then I had a guy come in and relieve me at 3:00, and it was Asian, but it was a Caucasian Asian.
See, we all Asian.
Yeah, we all Asian. Y'all just talk in front of it. But
Oh, damn. That's a good one.
C-A-U-C.
That's a good one.
I do stand up comedy.
I know. We're gonna get into that.
If you don't, you should.
Yeah. So she does. She does. No, I was gonna say America is a melting pot.
Exactly.
And I think Biloxi, the Gulf Coast, but Biloxi
it's
especially
way more diverse.
It's like a hyper concentrated thing of that. Like you said, the Croatians, the Slavics, like that's my people. It's the Spanish, like Joey, the French is on the Seymour side.
We didn't call people white for a long time on the coast because we knew those are the Croatians,
right?
Those are the Polish.
Right.
And then one day someone said white. We're like, we Polish. Like what the
exactly. And I think it's unique. I don't know. I'm sure there's other places around the U.S. I ain't been everywhere,
of course, but Mississippi,
Biloxi's that way. Well, the coast though.
The coast.
And then when we leave the coast, everybody in northern. Remember when we went to Hattiesburg? The coast trash is what they called me.
CT4
Maybe they were right.
CT4 left.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a whole different lifestyle up there.
Yeah.
The culture wise.
Yes.
So I love it from being down here. I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
New Orleans spillover. We've had that for forever. Biloxi was the seafood capital of the world for the longest time.
In the day,
and that's just a part of the story that you elaborated on that I really wasn't aware of or even put it in that context that I've seen the photos from the 20s of like would have been the Croatians coming over here, whatever ethnicity they were working in the factories and not realizing that, like you say, 2 generations, 1 generation out, their kids get education, they go do other things, and they're like, we need some more people to come over here. And the Vietnamese
so the immigrant torch,
exactly, got passed. That's right, to y'all.
But so this is gonna sound weird, and I'm not coming out.
You can do it. You can do it.
You do it. I'm not.
Last episode of the show. Here we go.
Croatians came in, left, got educated, brought in. Y'all's people came in, and Vietnamese left. Y'all's people.
Yeah.
Now your generation is leaving.
Yes.
Is that why the seafood market down here is so small? Do you think there's no workers left?
There's 2 things. So 9/11 happened, diesel price went up, and then imported shrimp took over. And then 94%, I believe, of the industry, the America shrimp was imported shrimp that came from India. 70% of our shrimp comes from India.
Pools, nasty stuff.
Yeah. And it wasn't regulated for so long. So did y'all know that there are American companies that invested in Asia?
Yes.
I did not know that until I read this book called The Fisherman and the Dragon, which talks about the Vietnamese refugees and the KKK, by the way. We'll get into that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which, yeah. So
it's a lot to go on.
It's not going to be a good story for us. It's not going to be a good story for us.
Yeah. So the Americans went and did this to their own people, which is wild to me. Like,
no, not at all for me.
You know what I'm saying? That is wild. The same thing with Nike, right? Nike was an American company, and they went over to Vietnam, opened up a factory, and they got cheap workers.
Yes, exactly.
So same thing.
That's called capitalism.
Yes.
For better or worse.
Yes.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but like the tariffs thing, I saw that it's a good thing because they're limiting the amount of imported shrimp coming in. Correct. So the reason why our seafood industry spiraled and went downhill was because of those 2 things. And the Vietnamese, they were hit the worst because I mean, the ones who couldn't speak English, where else were they going to work? My dad, who can't read and write, where else is he going to work?
Only thing he knows is the shrimp boat.
And you might see the hats that we're wearing. We got these hats we got these hats from the director of the Department of Marine Resources.
Yes, I follow him on Facebook. Okay, I'm a fan.
Spraggins is awesome.
Yes.
He brought us these hats, and we've been wearing them ever since. And like you said, it's a hot topic in the news right now with tariffs and the debate there, and it hits our town, our community, Vietnamese, but a lot of white people too, right? Like shrimpers for families of generations that they're finding like, thank God, I know Trump didn't say, actually, he did have
Yeah.
the seafood people in there the other day, but
Yeah.
it's a bigger topic than just the seafood.
Yes.
But they're finally like, somebody's finally sticking up for us little guys, and we can't compete. You're right. Diesel prices have gone up. Everything, the cost of everything has gone up except for the price of shrimp.
Yes.
It has not gone up.
Yes.
Since the 90s?
Yeah,
I don't know.
If I'm paying $4 or $5 diesel on water plus ice, and then I got to pay a crew, I got to pay at least my captain and then my crew, and I got to bring it back, and then I got to sell it for $4 or $5. What am I making off?
That's right.
Yeah, my uncle works out of Louisiana or Beaumont, Texas, I believe, but he lives in Louisiana. I think they're only buying 75 cents a pound. Shrimp.
Wow.
He's on a freezer boat.
Wow. And I'm guilty of not going out and buying as much as we should. Like my dad says it all the time because he works out of town a lot. He's like, we take it you don't realize how much you take for granted the seafood that we have here and how easy you can go just drive down to the dock and get it.
It
And I'm like,
better.
you know, you're right. You're right. He was like, it's like you take it for granted, so you don't always get it.
Right.
You don't always, utilize it the way we should.
Yeah. And it's sad to see what Biloxi was, the shrimping community, and what it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally 4 boats in a small craft harbor and a couple of ocean.
So again, Spraggins was telling us, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but like from the way they used to have registered commercial shrimper permits or licenses or whatever was in the thousands, and now it's in the hundreds.
Same with Blessing on the Fleet. It used to be a big event.
And now people are like, what is that? You know what I mean?
And then what was I going to say? So our exhibit starts off talking about the tension, the tension of the new, community moving in.
Yes.
And then it leads into us kind of integrating into society.
Right.
With the Biloxi community or the Gulf Coast community, because we lived everywhere all the way to Pass Christian.
Right.
Okay.
And then, we were divided for so long, but the Catholic Church kind of helped bridge. They translated a lot of the documents, the permits and stuff, everything into Vietnamese. And then they translated it for the people who couldn't read and write. And there were signs out, that was in Vietnamese. So they were a big part of it.
Right.
Richard Galat also was a big part of it.
Sacred Heart. In most Catholic church have
St.
a
Michael's.
big Asian following.
Father Dominic right now is over at Sacred Heart.
Yes, I think that's my friend's family.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best.
So, I mean, over time, we had people who helped us integrate it. So, like Richard Galat, I knew one of my friends' grandfather was actually murdered when he was walking home from the Glotts one day. And then they didn't know who else to call. So they called Richard Galat, and he came and he found, I'm not trying to bring race into it. He found 2 white guys who hit their grandfather with a 2x2 with a nail on it. And then he was the one who translated, who facilitated the conversation with the police. He went to the hospital and talked to the healthcare staff.
So he was good.
He was really good to the Vietnamese. Like, we cried whenever he passed away.
Okay.
Like, we were so moved by what he did. He stood up for us.
Wow.
And he gave us a voice when we didn't have a voice. We were all children. We couldn't speak for our parents.
Right.
So
even though he needed a workforce, he didn't treat him as just a workforce.
Yes, he became family. So one of the pictures that Robin Crone showed me, she texted me. She said, "Who are these Vietnamese people, this couple?" And then she said, "I don't know, but I'll post it on Facebook." And I found out it was one of the guys who hopped into the van with Richard Galat. And then Richard Galat was the one who got him to move to Biloxi. And he had like 13 kids. And he was actually related to the the guy that got killed. The one that was hit by the 2, they're cousins.
Okay.
Yes. So that was all his family that was moving over here. So Richard Galat had that Vietnamese couple's picture hanging in his office, and then Richard Galat passed, and they gathered all his stuff and they donated to the Seafood Museum. And then Robin's like, "Who's this?"
Wow.
And then we were able to identify who it was. And then I contacted them. I interviewed his kids. And then now I have his story in the museum for the exhibit. So he talks about how close they were to the Glotts.
Yeah. And I did.
We didn't even mention it.
I was going to say, I did a terrible job. I should have led with the fact
Yeah.
that y'all have an exhibit at the Maritime Museum down in Biloxi. Dang, I'm sorry. I was so excited to get into like y'all's backstory. And that opens up this weekend. I want to hit one more question before let's dive all into that. But like from your parents' perspective now, with the tariffs and stuff that we had just mentioned, how do they feel about, what have they been able to do to survive? Are they still in the industry, or have they had to do other things?
So after Hurricane Katrina, my mom used to be a casino dealer at Palace Casino, and then my dad had just sold his shrimp boat right before Katrina hit. So like, he got lucky. But we moved to Jackson, and my oldest brother had learned how to do nails. And, another stereotype for Asians, right? But it's another thing. You don't need a college education. You don't need to, all you do is just learn how to polish a toe.
It's good money in it.
Yeah,
scrub money in it.
Scrub a feet and polish your toes. And, eventually I learned how to do it. So, so my parents learned how to do nails. And then, so we did that for a while up until COVID. And then we sold our nail salon before COVID shut down.
So they transitioned from the seafood industry to the nail salon.
Yeah, nail salon.
industry.
So,
Okay.
they're very resilient.
Yeah,
They're not going to give up.
They make it happen.
Right.
Yeah, they're not going to give up. They're not going to settle. They're going to keep on moving, right? One disaster after another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Your parents did the same thing. What did they do after that?
So after Katrina, my dad actually went around and found like good wood and rebuilt the shop from ground up again. So we still have the craft factory operating today.
I just wish that type the way your parents look at life, because they have an appreciation that even we'll never have for this country and the way we were raised and brought up and the luxuries that we have.
Right.
They just have a don't quit, don't give up attitude, and I don't feel like that is championed enough or talked about enough or highlighted enough in today's culture. Do y'all feel the same way? It's more like victim mentality all the time, and who's got a better excuse as to why they can't do something, right?
Yeah, or blaming it on the government
or whatever.
Yeah. I see people always blame. I'm like, well, who did my parents blame? They just had to keep on moving. They had to keep on surviving. Sometimes it's good that they didn't really understand English because they didn't know what was all the noise, what was on the news.
I just got to do what I got to do.
People, if there was racial tension, my parents probably was oblivious to it because they couldn't understand the English, and then. So it's different from my generation and from my kids. I remember being a latchkey kid coming home. I went to Gornfield Elementary, and we would walk home through the woods, through the gates, iron gates, and then I would let myself in at 5 years old in kindergarten because my mom, worked on my dad's.
Didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice.
Let myself in. I knew to lock the door, and if somebody come, just to act like you ain't home, even though the Power Rangers is playing.
Right.
I can't hear nothing. The Power Rangers.
It's morphin' time. It's morphin' time.
Yeah.
You brought up.
What was your favorite Ranger?
Yellow Ranger.
I knew it.
It's not racist.
Canceled again.
He told us he could have those kind of questions. I cleared it with
Representation. Yeah, representation.
But it's funny you brought up the casino because it seems like most of the Asian culture has moved into casino life.
The whole coast did in the 90s. They all had to.
But it seems like there's more Asian dealers and stuff like that. Sure. Not in the seafood industry anymore, but in the casino.
Well, like I said, it was dying.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody had to
jump ship.
Everybody did.
My mom went to ESL class, and then she was like, I gotta learn English. I was like, if I want to work at the casinos and do table game dealer, I gotta know how to talk trash. So
and did they both learn English?
So my dad, he's very shy. He's the opposite. So that's probably why I married my husband, because he doesn't talk and he lets me do all the talking.
It would be awkward if y'all were both like that. It wouldn't work.
We'd be divorced by now.
2 chihuahuas in the same room.
Yeah, can't have it.
Yeah, so my mom's a talker. So my dad does speak English, but he's very shy. He's embarrassed of his accent, and he, of course, we'll get into his name later. But
Go ahead.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. Go ahead.
You might as well just do the two.
Yeah. So
I'll bleep it. Go ahead.
So I do stand-up comedy, right?
Right.
So I do stand-up comedy. I do open mic night. I've only done one open mic night, and people has always told me that I'm funny. They're like, your story's crazy. You should always write a book. You're so funny. You missed your calling. You should have been a comedian. And then so I went on stage for the first time.
I saw it.
My brother passed away, and I was like, you know what? Life's too short. My brother passed away at 40. I'm about to be, 36. I was like, I'm about to go up there. I don't care. So I went up there and I started talking. All I talk about is my childhood, trauma and my childhood, what I went through. And I was like, so I cuss a lot. I love cuss words.
I know. I'm with you.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, but y'all, it's because our name sounds like cuss words. I was like, my daddy's name is Fuck. I was like, Phuc, and my mama name is B-I-C-H. So I was like, so fucking bitch raised me. I was like, so when I learned English, I just let her roll.
Yes.
So we had a bitching time growing up. You know what I'm saying?
It's the same word.
Yeah, it's the same word. I remember, I was trying to write a note to my cousin telling him, mother fuck you. I was like, it ain't a cuss word. You can't tell on me.
No, that ain't a cuss word. It's my dad.
What makes it even better is she married to a Dane.
Yeah, I'm married to a Dane. So I'd be like, my Dane kids drive me crazy.
Yeah. I got some dangs in my family too. Dangs.
So my dad, whenever I was born, he got his U.S. citizenship. He changed his name to Timmy. So it's Timmy Fuchtel because nobody fucks with Timmy. And I was like, Dad, did you at least call over the radio and said, Timmy coming in with a fuck ton of shrimp?
Yeah, something like that.
A fuck ton of shrimp.
Yeah.
So my real name ain't Emma. You know, so my first name is Phung, Phung, but people like to say Fong because they can't say Phung.
We try our best.
We
But we get nervous too. Yeah, we get nervous. Yes.
And then my mama gave me her middle name because that bitch handed it to me. So my name is Fong, and it's But and it's Toe. Okay, so growing up,
say it all together,
so
please.
it's Fong Bit Toe, but it looks like Fong Bitch Toe.
So how the fuck am I supposed to say it? I can't do it. I can't do that.
So whenever I was at St. Martin High School, and then my mom was checking me out to go to the dentist get my teeth cleaned, you had to write your name on that booklet back then, and she wrote out my whole damn name, and then they twisted that booklet around, and that lady tried to read it. She said, "Okay." So she knew what the hell she was doing. She called over the intercom. She said, I was in algebra 2. She said, Phone Bitch Toe, please come to the office and check it out. And I'm sitting there, I'm like in the back of the row, and I'm like,
you didn't even get up, did you?
This bitch is getting out of here. Have fun with your quadratic formula.
Nice.
I didn't have the luxury of having a Vietnamese name. My parents assimilated. They just gave me
Jennifer.
Oh,
but then the funny thing is the letter J is not in the Vietnamese alphabet.
Okay.
So you're Jennifer.
Yeah, something like that. But no, they end up just using our last name. So my brothers, it's Jimmy, Jennifer, Jesse, and Johnny.
Well, if you're gonna have to learn something, make it all in line. You know what I mean? It's like just J. Yeah.
So my older brother nickname is in Vietnamese is me goy, meaning like noodles.
Noodles.
So
ramen.
Ramen.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And then for mine is Jennifer. So they call me Pho. And everybody knows Pho.
Okay.
Vietnamese noodles.
All
and
right.
then my younger brother Jesse. They call him Say, which is underwear. So we kept him. So growing up, we call him Captain Underpants.
So far, we got ramen, pho, and some underwear.
Yeah.
All right. So what else we got?
The last one, it was the youngest one. So Johnny, he was always, he's a bad kid. He was always a bad kid. He anything he did, he just spin it around. So we call him Super White. So nothing. Close. What?
I love the comedy that you put on everything though, because it's a way to deal with trauma, right?
Yeah,
it helps.
I can sit here and cry about it, wallow in it, or drink it away, or I can make fun of the hell out of myself.
I know.
What's crazy is the sensitive world we live in. If we weren't on this show doing this together, somebody would be like, "Oh my God!"
Well, I think there needs to be more of that. Right. Stuff, whether you're talking about,
I bring up Dave Chappelle.
Remember when Dave Chappelle was great?
Dave Chappelle, I mean, he made fun of everybody. South Park on every genre, all that stuff, and everybody was cool. And all of a sudden, we got sensitized. And
now everything is cultural appropriation.
Yeah,
I remember I went to a Halloween party whenever I was in nursing school at UMC in Jackson, and then someone dressed up as a Chinaman, and it was a white guy.
Yeah.
And then somebody.
What year was this?
This was 2012, maybe.
Oh, that's cell phone Facebook age. That was a ballsy move.
Someone was like, "Did you see that white guy dressed up as a Chinaman?" I was like, "Where he at?" I'm like, I want to take a picture with him, and it was my friend's boyfriend. Yeah. And I wasn't offended. I was like, "It's always the non-Asian people who's always offended for me." I'm like,
"Hey, we know.
Y'all need to chill out."
Yeah, that's exactly who.
We're not doing yellow face.
Yeah, go hug a tree or something.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, so we should have probably led with all of this. But we've got the backstory.
We're all friends here. We're not making fun of each other.
Right. But we got the backstory with y'all. We got your parents, this much of your parents' story, but we kind of can get the picture here. So y'all come together and decide we've got to document this. Is that what it is? And that's what Gulf Coast Vietnamese Narratives is?
Yes.
Okay. So paint that picture for us for the people in the audience.
So Gulf Coast Vietnamese Narrative started off at Ocean Springs Park where we were sitting there. And I even told Jen to bring the camera that day. I was like, we're going to take a picture of ourselves sitting on the bench. So that's why I was dressing ratchet in a t-shirt and some baggy pants like MC Hammer.
It was a trauma connection.
Yeah.
Right.
But
you knew then you wanted to do the Vietnamese narrative thing?
We talked about it on Facebook Messenger, and I was like, man, we need to do something. Let's talk about, how we started off, about what our parents went through and how it led to how we deal with our grief. We couldn't grieve appropriately because we were the Asian daughters, the only daughters, and we had to pretty much take care of our parents. So we were letting everyone else grieved while we took care of everything else.
Yeah, you didn't have
so
time
we
to
had
stop.
delayed
Yeah,
grief.
yeah,
So
yeah.
by the time we grieved, like it was so intense that I was like not functioning in the hospital.
Numb.
Like
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
like panic attacks in the hospitals. And I was like, what the hell's wrong with me?
Right.
So we got together and talked about our grief, and we're like, let's go to the root of the problem.
Mhm.
Let's go to how it all started. Let's talk about the history
Mhm.
of why we feel things so much more intense, where the trauma started. It was intergenerational traumas that was passed on to us, but let's embrace it.
Right.
We can't go back and change. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
Not an
can't go back and
excuse.
change what
Keep
happened
going
to
forward.
yeah, we can't go back and change what happened to in the past, but we can go back and embrace it, face it, sit beside it, and then we can, not give it to our kids. It's
Mhm.
time to put it down.
Mhm.
So we created Gulf Coast Vietnamese narratives, and I was like, let me go look at the museums and all the stuff that we have down here if there's any Vietnamese history. So I think Jen was possibly working that day, and then I went by myself with my husband. I went to the George Orr Art Museum,
Yep.
Yeah.
went in there, and then because she told me that there was an exhibit by a Vietnamese guy with the last name Dent, it was gone. It was temporary,
Mhm.
gone. And then I didn't see anything in there. So I was like, well, let's look up the seafood museums. Surely we're in there.
Right.
Gotta be.
At least in a stereotypical way,
Yeah.
we're right? Like
So
we're in that industry.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, we're in there
Yeah.
for sure. So I walked in there that day, and then I saw Elizabeth Alexander, and then I was like, hey, do you have anything on Vietnamese history? And she said no. And I was like, well, how much is the admission? And she said it's free today because we have a reception for a feature artist, which we're about to have.
Sweet.
And so I was like, okay. I was like, well, what floor would be the Vietnamese on? She said there's one picture on the 3rd floor. So we went, we looked at every single floor, and then we went through it, and we saw Croatians, the Spanish, the French, and then the Polish, and then we went all the way to the top, and we saw one picture of the National Geographic of a Vietnamese girl who looked like she was 12 years old,
Right.
working in the seafood factory.
Wow.
And I said,
There's more to our story here than
Yeah.
that.
there's more to our
Yeah.
story. And then I was pissed.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm angry, but what do I do with this anger?
Correct.
I can go and leave a bad Facebook review.
Mhm.
I was like, or I can do something to make a change.
Mhm.
So I thought about it. And then that day, my husband had took pictures of me sitting in the museum, and then I posted it on a Facebook with me sitting in George Orr Museum, sitting there. I said, is it crazy that I want to do a Vietnamese museum for our people in Biloxi because no one talks about us? I
Mhm.
was like, people talk about us verbally, but we're about to be forgotten in history.
Yeah.
Our
Right.
parents are dying.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, a lot of our, Jen's, dad has passed away. A lot of our parents have passed away already. I was like, their stories die with them whenever they pass
Mhm.
away. My brother's stories died with them whenever they
Yeah.
passed away. I wanted to talk to them about their experience growing up, in the 80s. So I posted it, and then someone reached out to me, and they said, hey, I know Robin Crone at the Seafood Museum. She was like, why don't you reach out to her? And then she's actually a neurosurgeon, pediatric neurosurgeon at UMC in the Sanderson Children's Hospital. Her name is Kristen Weaver. Shout out to her.
Okay.
And she was going to email them, but she got busy. She's the only female pediatric neurosurgeon in the state of Mississippi. So she's busy as hell.
Yeah.
So I was going to wait on her. I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait on her. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and email them myself. So I emailed the only email I saw on there, which was like an outreach director, which went directly to Elizabeth Alexander, the person who I talked to at the desk that day.
Okay.
And then I reached out to her, and I was like, hey, my name is Emma Toe. I am the founder of Gulf Coast Vietnamese Narratives with my co-founder, Jennifer Lee. I would love to meet with you to talk to you about Vietnamese history that I did not see in the Seafood Museum.
Mhm.
And she said, yes, absolutely. Come in and see me.
Sweet.
And then we worked out our time. And then I came down that following week. And then I actually went there with a photographer who was used to live in New York City. I met him in a workshop for a storytelling because I was writing my memoir, and he's a photographer or whatever that he loves capturing stories through his photographs. So he was like, hey, I'm from Pascagoula. He was like, I'm going to be in Mississippi during the same time that you're going to be there at the museum. Why don't we meet up and figure out how we're going to collaborate? His name is Horatio Wynn, which his photos will be in the exhibit.
Okay.
So he met up with me whenever I was walking into the museum. Jen was in the dentist appointment, and I was waiting for her, but then Elizabeth just came out early. So she talked to me. I pretty much did an elevator pitch within 3 minutes. And I talked to her, and I was like, hey, I was like, you do not have anything on Vietnamese people. I would love to give it to you. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm a healthcare provider.
Right.
I was like, but I've talked to Dr. Deanne Stevens, who is a professor at the USM in the history department. She's a historian pretty much. And she wrote a book called Mississippi Gulf Coast seafood industry, which has the Vietnamese in there.
Okay.
And I was like, and she has pretty much mentored me on who to contact, like City of Biloxi, blah, blah, and Seafood Museum was one of them. And I pretty much told her, I was like, there's a need. I was like, we're about to be erased from history, and I would love to talk to you about having Vietnamese history. And she said yes. And like, I was prepared to go in there and to hear no. Like, I was like 3 minutes, and I was like, she's going to say no. I'm just going to walk out disappointed.
Right.
And Elizabeth said yes. And then she was like, I have pictures, and I have a PDF, and I have essays that was written about the Vietnamese community. She's like, you can have it all.
Okay. So at that time, you had no content. You had an idea
I
and a
had an
passion,
idea,
but no
yes.
content, no interviews, no pictures, no nothing.
Did y'all have a lot of pictures from your childhood growing up? Was that a thing?
So
Or Katrina.
Yeah.
Katrina.
Yeah,
she-
Katrina.
yeah.
They got
Katrina
everybody.
wiped it all
Oh,
out.
yeah,
Yeah,
they got everybody.
bunch of-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we had posted on Facebook when we first started. We said, hey, we want to interview people. We want people to donate photos. No one. Crickets.
Yeah.
Really?
Crickets. And then everyone.
Was that damn algorithm, or was that your community
I
not
think
wanting to share?
The community not wanting to share. They were very hesitant. Their parents were very hesitant.
Yeah.
A lot of trauma. You know, like I'm just telling you about like, all the stuff that they went through.
Right.
And then a lot of people just didn't want to, didn't want to contribute. So I said, okay. So when Elizabeth emailed me all the photos, and then she said, she pretty much took over a job where someone retired. She said, my predecessor left me all these Vietnamese stuff. I don't know what to do with it. Maybe you can look at it and figure it out.
Mhm.
So Tim Isbell, his photos, he had documented the Vietnamese community in 1989 to 1991. And he had a major big traveling exhibit that was in the Georgia Ore Museum, and it went nationally, and there was a grant for it. So I told Jen, I was like, I think I'm going to reach out to this photographer and see if we can use his photos in the exhibit.
Mhm.
And then so I found him on LinkedIn, added him on Facebook, added his author Facebook, and then I emailed him. No response. Crickets. And I'm like, okay. And then I waited for a couple weeks, and I'm like messaging him on Facebook Messenger, emailing him again, contacting people who are mutual friends with me on Facebook. And I was like, I'm about to roll up on his house with a basket of egg rolls.
I'm about to get this dude.
With a basket of egg rolls.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
nah, who's there? Egg rolls. Egg roll here.
Yeah.
Egg roll walking in. And then he responds. And then I saw he posted on Facebook. He's like, he had a stroke a year before,
Wow.
and he has aphasia, and his wife has been helping him answer all the emails.
Okay, so that was the delay.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
really,
yeah.
I was like, thank God. 'Cause
He had
He
an
didn't know what he was about to
excuse. He
get.
had an
Yeah.
excuse.
Yeah, he had a good
yeah,
one.
yeah. His buddy had 2 Asian girls on his. Yeah, we love you, long tongue. Give me your pictures.
Yeah.
So, and then he said, yes, you can have all of my photos. And the one that Elizabeth gave me was only like maybe 50 photos.
Yeah, it
I
was
believe-
about 50. Yeah.
So he said, I'm going to drop you off a CD, a disc with photos on it.
Mhm.
And then I was like, a disc? I was like, okay. I was
Going
like, girl.
back.
What am I going to play it on?
Yeah.
they
I'm
gave
like,
us the USB though.
I'm like, and then they dropped off a jump drive, and I was in Missouri doing locum. And then I was like, I called Jen up. So Jen, her job in GCVN, she's like the gopher. She's like behind the scenes. She pretty much brings everything together, while I am the talker, apparently.
Yeah, we couldn't tell. We couldn't tell.
I network.
Catching vibes,
Yeah. I network, and I get people to talk, and
She's
I interview.
Batman, I'm Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she went and picked up the jump drive. She uploaded to Google Drive, and then I looked through it. We recognized some people, we couldn't recognize all. And I told Jen, I was like, we're going to post this on Gulf Coast Vietnamese Narratives, and we're going to see who these people, these children, these grandparents, these people who had gardens in the middle of the ghetto and the projects,
Right.
And I was like, we're going to post it and see who these people are. As soon as we posted like 20 photos. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's my grandma. That's my
Right.
great grandma.
Now you got buy-in.
That's my
Yeah.
aunt.
Yeah.
Now they
Yeah,
open
like,
up.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
you cracked
me.
the code.
Yes, that's me as a child riding on a bike with no shoes on. And I'm pretty sure I stole that bike and spray painted it.
We're going to need that back.
And then that's my aunt cutting my hair on the front porch. And all these, nostalgia came back. And then everyone contacted us like, and I said, I'm going to contact them. They're like, that's my mom. My mom's died. My grandma's died.
Right.
My siblings died. This is like a grief journey. Our grief led us to other people's grief that opened up.
Mhm.
And instead of wallowing our grief and sitting in the pain, we somehow created a celebration
Mhm.
of the grief that we, encountered. So I interviewed every single person. And it was pretty much time was dwindling down, and Elizabeth and Robin was like, so what are you doing right now? I was like, I'm trying to write, but I don't know what I'm writing. And then that was whenever Robin, which, she's the head of all of us at the museum. And she said, why don't we do a local feature artist? So every quarter they have a local feature artist,
Right.
painters, whatever they have, and you guys will be the local feature artist. And I was like, well, how's that going to happen? And I'm like, well, you were the art, and the writing, and the photos with Tim Isbell, and you're bringing all this together. So you're going to be local feature artists. So that's why the exhibit is up from April 4th until June 30th. That's the quarter. And it's going to be rolled over to a permanent exhibit on the second floor and permanently be in the CJ Museum.
Sweet.
As it should be. Yeah.
So those pictures were never released. Nobody ever saw
it. It
those
was in the
pictures.
Sun Herald in 1991, 92. And we were children. We couldn't read yet. And our parents couldn't read. So Tim Isbell was assigned to document sports. He was supposed to be taking pictures of sports, but he looked over and saw these Vietnamese kids playing in the Vietnamese community. He's like, I should be documenting this. So he ignores the people playing sports and he starts taking pictures of the Vietnamese. And then all the Vietnamese people were like, who's this white?
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, how did that go?
They're about to sit us back on this boat. Hey, get back on this boat.
Yeah. What are they doing?
Yeah. Who does white dude taking pictures of us?
Yeah.
And he's like walking up to people who was like drying fish out, so in the projects they had like laundry lines that they hung out for us with these little pipes, and they had these little, wires. And then the Vietnamese hung these nets on there and then dried fish.
Yep.
And then they would sell the fish at the market. They're the hustlers.
Yeah.
Right. So he's taking pictures of them drying fish. He's taking a picture of them watering their garden. And then he's taking pictures of the kids playing. And then none of the Vietnamese elders talk to him. They can't speak English. And then they're like kind of standoffish.
For sure.
But the little kids come up. They're like us. They're like, hey, who are you? Why are you taking a picture of us? They're like 5 or 6 years old.
It's a cool camera.
Yeah. And then he hands them like disposable cameras. He's like, you guys go take pictures or whatever the hell you want. And bring it back to me. And then they end up taking pictures of it, but they lost it. So he eventually got invited to the barbecue, pretty much.
There we go. Now we're communicating.
We're on the same page now.
Yeah.
Breaking bread, baby.
Yeah. So he's coming inside the house, and then he's like taking a picture of them, like cooking on the wok. And then they invite him in. They give him food. They give him what we call fish sauce. And then this like a sweetened fish sauce. So fish sauce is very potent. It's very salty.
Salty,
it stinks.
yeah.
And then what we do is we take that, we add water, sugar, and then fresh red peppers.
Love it.
And then
A little spicy.
Tim didn't know. And then Tim didn't know.
Lit him up.
He got it quick, huh?
He didn't know. And then he ate it and he instantly felt burned. And then like all the Vietnamese people, all the kids started laughing.
Yeah.
They all started laughing. He was like, what did you eat? And the kids were like, we are eating pizza.
We're not eating that stuff.
Silly white boy.
Yeah.
So they started accepting him because he would develop the pictures. There was negative pictures back then. So he would develop the pictures and he would hand it to them.
Okay.
And then that was whenever they smiled and they were like, oh, so you're not here to deport us or whatever.
Right.
So
and they probably couldn't have afforded. What year would this have been?
1989 to 91, 92.
They probably would have got in there a little bit.
Yeah.
Not a professional photographer.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So a lot of us didn't have photos.
Right.
A lot of us were poor. I mean, we were in ghetto.
Yeah, they're not gonna spend money.
Yeah.
So it's a luxury.
He gave these pictures out to all these people. So he was in the Sun Herald. They did a whole series. It's called Coast Life, and it talked about the Vietnamese community, talked about Easton homes, and all of our like our brothers' age people are in the newspaper, but none of them saw it. So whenever we posted all of his pictures onto Facebook, they were like,
Your
"Oh my
community
gosh!"
was ready to was able to receive it this time.
Yes, and then all the kids are grown up now.
Right.
And then I showed my parents and everything. They're like, they're like, well, how are you talking to people? Why? Even her mom said, people don't want to talk about the past. People don't want to be interviewed.
It's a different time.
And then I was just like, well, Mom, you're not going to live forever. I was like, if I don't get the stories now, I was like, when you die, I was like, how will I tell the grandkids and then their kids?
Yeah.
It was going to be forgotten.
Yep. What would have been in the time frame for that gentleman that was taking the
Tim
photo?
Isbell,
Yeah, and he's the one that you said that had the stroke, right?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
so I'm just
yes.
making sure I'm connecting all that.
Yes.
What would have been the time frame from when he started taking those photos to when he finished of all the material that you got?
I think he did it over, I want to say less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So he kept at it. Like he was doing
kept at
sports
it.
and he was like, this is the thing. And I'm
Yes.
going to, like a passion project.
Yes, a passion project. And then he was afraid that the Sun Herald wasn't going to accept it because he had hundreds of photos. And then he finally submitted it. And they're like, oh my gosh, Tim. They're like, this is great. We're going to do a whole series of this in the Sun Herald.
Okay.
And they did. And then they did an exhibit. And then some of the Vietnamese people who were in there, he invited them and they came. But the Vietnamese community didn't know. They didn't know. A lot of them didn't know, didn't remember.
Yeah. Pre cell phones, pre social media.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard to market it, right?
Right.
And he still showed up to like the Chinese, the Vietnamese New Year, Lunar New Year event. He goes to the Catholic Martyrs Church, the Buddhist temple. He takes pictures there.
To this day?
To this day.
Oh, wow.
I was about to say, if I was going to attack, I'm going to church.
Yeah.
If I'm going to hand pictures out, that's where I'm going. Yeah.
So he still takes pictures today and everyone knows who he is. they are like, hey, he's a white guy who always comes every year.
Right,
Takes a
right. Don't
picture
mind
of
him, honey. He's fine.
That's the fish sauce. Dude.
Yeah, we got him in the 80s with the fish sauce. It's cool.
He still got heartburn.
He good. Yeah.
So he's going to be at the exhibit tomorrow. His wife Judy, she's a great supporter, and she's going to be there. She kind of takes over and talks for him whenever he can't put his words together.
Right.
So he's excited because I asked him, I was like, did you realize 30 years ago that your pictures were going to be unburied again and come back out and be a part of an exhibit that became a permanent exhibit? He said no, and he said if Gulf Coast Vietnamese narratives never have reached out to me and brought these pictures back, these pictures would have died with me.
That's right. That's right.
And what's crazy is, I guess your parents are the same way. Your mom and dad were. They were like, okay.
Yeah, no one cares about it.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, why are we still talking
Yeah.
about this? It's already over.
It's no big deal. I slang my breast milk. I'm like,
It's a big deal, Mom.
I try to walk my mom actually up to the maritime and seafood industry. We walked up each floor and I showed her. She's like, oh, that machine, very expensive.
Yes.
And I was like, Mom, look at the words. They're talking about the stories. It's like, well, who cares about the stories?
Yeah. It's a perspective thing for them, though, right? That's her perspective.
It's kind of the stuff that we want to do on this show.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we take the old school fishermen, we take all this other stuff, and in hopes that one day your grandkids, our grandkids will watch us and be like, dang, Grandpa was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, they're not. Hopefully the stories will be cool.
Right.
Grandma says the F word.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Grandma cuss all the time.
Because my great grandpa name was Folk. It's in my blood.
So what are your parents specifically, or their generation? What's their take on like cell phones and social media when they see this kind of stuff? Is their mind blown? Are they like, what are y'all doing? What's going on here?
So I think Asian parents don't say I'm proud of you, and they don't ever say good job.
Really?
They just cut fruit and they hand it to you, and they're like, oh,
Yeah, they
It was
don't
like-
show you really
literally
well.
cut fruit and hand it to
like
you.
literally like, oh, here's an apple. Like, what are you doing with the exhibit? Like,
Seriously? That's
their way of
Yeah,
being proud of you?
yeah.
Handing you an apple?
yeah, cutting fruit and handing us a plate of fruit and asking us if we eat, and food is their love language.
Right.
So I told my parents I was doing this, and I don't think they realized the depth.
Which I can understand that,
Yeah,
regardless of being
yeah.
Vietnamese or whatever, like not understanding
Yeah.
the scope of what's going to happen.
Like whenever I was showing them like the WLOS, I'm like, look at your daughter. I was like, remember all the time she talks too much on her report card? Look at that.
Yeah.
She on WLOS.
I'm paying off now, Mama.
Yeah.
I was like, it's like,
Celebrity.
they should have never taught me English.
Yeah.
So my mom, I think they're proud. I think they are proud, even though they don't say it. Like,
Wow. Do you ever ask, or not ask, but do you ever say like, hey, like in today's society, people say proud of you, and like,
yeah,
this is what I'm doing with my children,
Yeah.
because I'm assuming that's what you do
Yeah.
for your kids.
I tell them, my kids.
They're like,
Yeah.
we're not doing that.
No.
Yeah. Well, my daughter said the other day, and I showed her my mom a picture of her and my daughter, asleep together whenever my mom was babysitting her. Whenever my daughter was 2, my daughter's 9 now. And I sent it to my mom, and she's like, I love her so much, but I can't tell her that. I don't want her to know. I was like,
She said that?
Yeah.
Your mom said that?
Yeah.
And what are you, because you're in the middle.
Yeah.
Your daughter has no clue what that means.
I'm like-
And you're like, Mom, that's not how
I
we
like
do that.
America 2025, Mom. You tell her. She got enough apples and strawberries.
Yes. Your girl got a cavity from all the damn fruit you've been giving her. Just tell her you love her.
Like, Grandma never told me she loved me, but she
Yeah.
keep giving me strawberries.
All these apples, what am I going to do with them?
Damn. That's awesome.
Yeah, so she actually said like it's still in her mindset. Like, I can't tell her I love her. I can't tell her. I don't even think we have a word that says I'm proud of you.
In Vietnamese?
No, we don't. We
Wow.
don't. Like,
Did-
that's how serious they are. Like, we won't have it in our
Well,
language.
So that kind of
Like-
answers my question, because I
Yeah.
was going to say, have you ever asked your parents, like, was that like inadvertently taught to them? It was that on purpose? Was that just the culture?
It's a part
That's
of
just
our
the culture.
It's
Okay.
a part of our culture. So they believe in like this superstition. Like, if you compliment your kids too much, then they
Yes.
They get lazy.
No, that's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yes.
They just maybe took it
Yeah.
to the extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you compliment
We're going to get rid of the whole world.
The whole world.
Whole
Don't
world.
even- don't even- You like strawberries?
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Strawberry in
Yeah.
definition.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So like it's not, like they never said, I'm proud of you. I'm so happy. Like when I remember when I graduated from CRNA school and I walked across the stage, and I was like, Mom, are you proud of me? I have my doctor.
You asked.
Yeah, I was like, I have my doctor of
She pull
nursing
out a banana?
practice.
You started feeling it and just handed it to you.
Yeah, so are you proud of me? I graduated with my doctorate, in nursing. And then she was like, if I would have beat you a little more, you become medical doctor.
Oh,
That's some gangster ass
Hey,
comment,
she's
Mom.
pushing you to get better, though.
Yeah.
She's pushing you to get
Never
better.
stop.
I wasn't hard enough on you.
Yes, I
pushing
love
you to
that.
get better.
I love that.
Yeah.
When you walk through the produce section in Walmart, do you feel good vibes?
Little drama.
No, just like happy,
Yeah.
I
right?
don't know why I'm hitting the cantaloupe.
Yeah, they're just smacking the
Is it-
watermelon.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Fruit salad's the best thing on earth. Like
Yeah,
everything we got
I
on
love
there.
it, I love it. So you mentioned the exhibit. It starts to the tomorrow, May the
So the
3rd.
reception. So the exhibit's on display right now, but you'll have to pay if you go look at it right now.
Okay.
But tomorrow it's free admission with the reception.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's
Till June
tomorrow.
30th.
Yeah, so it's from April 4th to June 30th for the exhibit, and you'll have to pay if you go outside of those dates. But tomorrow is our reception where it's free admission. And it's from 4 to 6 p.m. We have Blazing Cajun, who is catering their crawfish. It's like 200 pounds.
Right.
And then we have a banh mi charcuterie board that we're getting made, and one of the galots actually is helping us prepare that. So it's almost like a beautiful
Yeah, kind of
we're
full
coming-
circle.
full circle
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
together. And then Bailey Galaho, who is the shrimp queen of this year or 2024, she's coming. Her parents coming, Truly Galat, and
Mhm.
her father Tam Ho. They're coming. So the exhibit, it talks about the timeline of the tension of the Vietnamese coming, and then it goes into how we integrate it, and then also goes into Richard Galat, helping us integrate the Catholic Church, and then it goes into the modern day where we went through Hurricane Katrina together, BP oil spill together, the 9/11 diesel price, the imported
Right.
shrimp, and then that kind of made the Vietnamese and the Americans, the local fishermen, we're Americans too, but the non-Asians or whatever stand together.
Correct.
Yeah,
This, eventually we realized, why would we hate each other or fight each
Right.
other?
We do the same thing.
We're all
Same
fighting.
issue,
Yeah, we're all
yeah.
Same
fighting the
thing.
same issue.
There's a bigger enemy out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the imported shrimp.
Government.
Yeah,
Right.
So it's a thing where we're all coming together. We started from in the beginning where there's tension, where there's bumper stickers where it says "Get rid of us" to "Hey, Galat's doing our charcuterie board,"
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we have someone who is mixed Vietnamese and mixed Galat. So
Yep.
it's all coming together, to the present day. So I think it's beautiful.
I think it's
Yeah,
great.
the
I think it's
exhibit,
great. That's why
you know?
as soon as I saw you post it, I was like,
Gotta
gotta
get this
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And it's not the same. So the book where I told you about the fisherman and the dragon,
Mhm.
it talks about Seadrift, Texas. They did not have an experience like Biloxi did. We had a Richard Galat. We had the Catholic Church. Seadrift, Texas was a whole ordeal. I mean,
They roughed
had
it.
Yeah, they roughed it. They had the KKK come down,
Oh,
protest.
okay. Yeah, you mentioned
Was
that. Okay.
burning. They were burning the shrimp boats. They're shooting at each other. So they had a rough go of the Vietnamese refugees trying to integrate.
Okay.
And then Biloxi, when people say, "Oh, you're from Mississippi," they're like, "Ooh, what was that like in
Right.
Mississippi?"
Right.
I'm like, first off, I'm from the coast.
Yeah.
Second off,
Exactly.
A lot of
I do that too.
people don't
First off, I'm
understand.
from the
Yeah.
coast. Let's get it straight.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
6
yeah.
counties to the south
they
is a
don't.
whole different
They
state
don't.
than
They
the
don't.
rest
They
of
don't. They
Mississippi.
don't.
I was like, they used to immigrants. I was like,
Yeah.
they were little, we were in bus at first, but they
Yeah.
got used to us
Yeah.
real
They
fast.
kind of white down
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Not
like,
that we didn't have a bad pass. I'm not trying to say
I
we
was
didn't.
like, the first thing we got was like bumper stickers, but yeah. And then, so I told them, I was like, we had the Richard Galat, and then we had, the Catholic Church to help us integrate. And I feel like that's what helped us, and where we didn't have all the issues with, like Seadrift, Texas did.
And like you
Yeah.
said, the Richard
Yeah.
Galat story, that's throughout your whole community.
Yes,
the
like,
Vietnamese
we
community.
love
They
them.
all
We
do
love
that.
them.
Okay.
We- yeah,
That's,
and
that's
then-
He's
such
the
a, what a
godfather.
legacy, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's impressive.
Because
Because it could have been the opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
He could have been like a real ass that
Yeah.
all your parents' generation, like, yeah, we had a job, but we resent him because he was
Right,
a
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he really cared about us, and he stood up for us. Like, I'm telling you, like,
Right.
for one of us to call him whenever someone gets hit in the
Yeah.
head, our family member
Right.
gets
Yeah.
hurt.
Right.
And he was
Right.
a pretty powerful man back
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
day.
I'm sure.
To
Yeah.
have
Sure.
a voice.
Seafood
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
at that
Yeah,
time.
and he actually helped catch those two guys, and like, for him to do that when he didn't have to,
Right.
he could have just been like, "That's not my problem,"
Yeah.
like, "I'm sorry," but he helped. And so, like, he's so respected in our community. When he passed away, we pretty much cried.
Wow.
And we still talk about him still to this day, and we're going to tell our kids about him.
Right.
That's
So
that's
And
that's heavy. That
I'm
to
sure
me, for
that's
me, that's
going to
heavy.
be in the museum, your showcase, all
Yeah.
that stuff. Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
You mentioned the photographer and the photos, right?
Yes.
What are we going to see when we go down there? Is it photos? You also said you interviewed families.
Yes.
Do you mean like recorded it, or how did you do
Yeah.
that?
So some of them I recorded it, and then some of them I just interviewed them on Messenger, but just because it was hard
Okay.
for me to, my time and time
Mhm.
zone. Like, a lot of them don't live in Biloxi anymore.
Right.
Like, Mr. Mao, family, which is the picture that was in Richard Glass' office. His family's in Houston, Texas now.
Okay. Was that a Katrina thing?
No, I think he left whenever he realized he didn't want to be in the seafood industry anymore.
Okay.
But he was actually building shrimp boats for all the Vietnamese.
Sweet.
Yeah. So he went to Texas and built shrimp boats over there. So their family, I had to reach out to them. There's like a family, like 13 kids. And then I interviewed them over Messenger. And then I took a picture of the exhibit when I went up. And then they were like, thank you. They were like, you know, our dad passed away. He actually went on a fishing trip and fell off the boat and drowned and passed away. And then they're like, but, you know, once again, my grief, our grief,
Right.
connected other people with their grief.
Turned it into a positive.
And then I was like, tell me about your dad. And I was like, tell me about how he started. Where was he from in Vietnam? Tell me about what was your life like in Biloxi? And then I wrote this exhibit. And then after we got done, I made sure the family, you know, saw that it was correct, everything, you know, to honor their family.
Right.
And now that it's printed and it's up the exhibit, I took a picture and I sent to them. And then they were like, when we go to Destin or whatever and drive through, we're going to stop by and see
That's
our
so
dad.
Cool.
So, you know, it's one of those things where I didn't realize that my grief was going to have a purpose.
I love it because when you have such a baggage of that, like you said, and you got generational stuff going on, plus your brothers, your dad, your family, what do you do with this thing?
Yeah.
It's a cancer if you let it be.
Yeah.
Can I put it in me and let it destroy me?
Yeah.
Right? Because I got a good excuse now too.
Yeah.
What about this?
Yeah, I'm angry. I'm angry. Yeah, I'm angry.
You can't tell me, and I've seen people
Throw
do
it
that.
against the wall.
I've felt it myself, you know,
Yeah.
but it's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to spin it around into something positive. And that's what you've done. And so,
and one of the most beautiful arts that's ever created was through pain, you know, like Edgar Allan Poe and all these artists and sculptors and everything, like they were hurting and they create these beautiful art. And I feel like even though I'm not sculpting something, I'm creating something.
Oh, there's many versions of art, right?
Yeah, you know, so this is the form of art that we, you know, we are not meant to harbor this pain and carry it. It's a heavy stone inside of us, right? We're meant to bring it out and then we're meant to, you know, just chisel it.
Right.
And create something out of it, right? We're meant to externalize our emotions and bring it into the outside world.
Do you know any other Vietnamese exhibits or anything like this that exist?
This is the first permanent Vietnamese exhibit. It was funded by Mississippi Humanities Council. So thank you. So this was the first permanent Vietnamese exhibit in the state of Mississippi.
It's like, it's one of those things that seems so obvious that it's obviously been done before. And then you like start looking around, you're like, oh, it hasn't.
Yeah, no, it has. Yeah, that's the crazy part.
Right.
And I'm a nobody. Like I have such imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm just like a girl from the projects in Biloxi who went to, you know, Jackson.
No, y'all famous now. Y'all super famous now.
We started off the, you know, she started off the backyard, you know, child labor.
Yeah.
Y'all go
we nobody.
Y'all gonna be the Vietnamese historians from here on out. Your great grandkids will be like, look at my mom.
So, you know, I'm a nobody. Who are we to start something to where it becomes permanent? I was like, why do we think that we're able to do it? So whenever I reached out to the museum, I never realized they're going to say yes. I didn't realize how quickly it was going to explode. At this point, we have the program manager of the 2 museums in Jackson. They reached out to us and they want to work with us now to bring some of our stuff up there in the 2 Jackson museums, because like we have little things on Vietnamese people. So now like it's expanding, like the entire Mississippi needs to know. And then, so the Chinese in the Delta, you know, I don't know if y'all heard about that. There's a big Chinese community in the Delta and they have their own museum.
Doing what?
So they came over after the railroads were done being built, and they came to pick cotton, and they realized that was hard work and little pay, and they were sharecroppers. And then they.
So you're talking. They came over a long time ago. This isn't something new.
1840s, right?
Okay.
And then their generations deep, and then they opened up grocery stores during the segregation. You know, North Mississippi is very segregated. They're not like us.
No,
probably the most.
when there's a stereotype about Mississippi, I'm like, that's a Delta. But
right.
They got 2 separate, you know, funeral homes. So they had grocery stores that, you know, served the Black community. So they have a museum at Delta State University that preserves this history, that talks about that. And there's even a documentary talking about that. So I reached out to them, you know, when I was trying to figure out what we were going to do for the Vietnamese on the coast. And I said, hey, and I was like, I want to somehow do something for the Vietnamese museum down here in Biloxi. Can I stop by and talk to somebody, reach out to them? So I was on my way to Missouri to do my, you know, locum assignment. And I drove through, you know, Delta State, and I stopped by, I looked at the museum, walked around, and got some ideas, took a picture of it. I talked to one of the managers there, and then I was like, I don't know how to do this. I was like, I don't know where to start. I was like, I'm a nobody. Once again, that imposter syndrome. He's like, every every project starts with someone
Correct.
who believes.
Yeah, you just had to have a spark.
All you need to do is just have a little belief, and someone believed in this museum, and that's why the Chinese in the Delta have a museum now. He's, you could do this. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
But everything just kind of opened the doors, right? And if people don't believe in God, like I definitely believe in God because of this. Because once I opened this door, another door opened, and it led me to this and that and this and that.
It's funny what happens when your perspective shifts, right?
Yes.
Again, going back to like if you let something overtake you and overcome you and define you and eat you alive, or you always looking for an excuse or whatever, then that is what will happen.
Yeah.
But if you decide to say, and all your feelings are correct. I mean, I felt it 1,000 times in my life too. It's like imposter syndrome. Like, who am I? Why hasn't anybody else done this before? What? I can't do that.
Yeah.
And, but I'm too stupid and not to stop sometimes on certain things, right? And
nobody else does it.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, wow. And then you get to like a finish line. You know, you have this exhibit now. Yeah. And you're like, wow. Okay, cool. You know,
and we haven't had a chance to like kind of slow down. We're like elbows deep in it right now, so we haven't been like a chance to like kind of breathe. I'm like, oh wow, we really did this. Right now, we're just like, you know, what food do we need tomorrow? Like, so like we're like, you know, eyeballs up to here right now in the exhibit. So we haven't had a chance to kind of step back and like.
Tomorrow afternoon when everybody's there though, and everybody shows up,
take a good
that's
look
when
at
you're gonna breathe in and be like, it's cool.
Yeah. So to bring it around full circle is like, what is Gulf Coast Vietnamese narratives going to be outside of this? You know, you've already accomplished a ton in a short amount of time. Where are y'all going to take this after the exhibit? It's gonna be a permanent exhibit there, right? So what's the next thing that you're gonna do? Like, I want you to interview people. I want you to get some audio out there, like documented with their voice, their way they said it. Have you done any of that yet?
So we have some, but I think we need to get more.
Right.
And
just to stop you, the reason I say that is I've said it once or twice on the show before. USM interviewed my great grandfather.
Oh wow.
He was born in
history.
1890, and I want to get a copy of that. So if you know anybody in that department,
I can get you a copy.
Okay. 1890 French was his first language, and I've listened to it, but it was like 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't have a copy of it anymore.
I can get you the downloadable.
And it's just crazy to hear him describe why Gaucher is named Gaucher. It's because it's a family, and he knew them, right? Because it was just only a few families here anyway. Yeah, it's just a totally different perspective, and to hear it from him, a guy who I never met because he died before I was born. I think the same thing, like for your community, as you say, before that generation starts to pass away into the next life, to have that documented would be great.
So we are actually working with the Mississippi State University TV series, and they're doing a documentary on the fisher folk, the Vietnamese specifically.
Okay.
The one on the coast, or which one are you? In Starkville or the one down here?
Starkville, but they come down here, and then they've been on a shrimp boat. They went to the Vietnamese Martyrs Church, and they have interviewed me, and then they're going to be there tomorrow, actually. So that's going to be a video recording of me, and then also Jennifer tomorrow, because we're both going to be there at the same time. So like we're trying to get more like audio stuff out there, but videos also.
For sure.
But Horatio Nguyen, the photographer that I told you about, who has the more updated photos, that's in the exhibit, he actually collaborated with us to help him pitch to like major magazines. Like we pitched to National Geographic, and we plan on pitching to New York Times, and then a few other, Smithsonian. So we wanted to get more out there. So because every time people talk about Mississippi and they don't realize the Vietnamese people are here. I was like, we need a broader, audience to understand. We need to put us on a map to understand that Mississippi ain't that Mississippi you thinking.
Right. Yeah. In the other states, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, I mean, all the South, do you see a big number of Vietnamese?
On the coast, Bayou La Batre.
Bayou La Batre.
Yeah, they got a large Vietnamese and Cambodian community. But I don't know if they have an exhibit like us, like I don't know if we'll eventually branch out and try to get other stories in other states and get an exhibit going there.
Just make a network. Huge
if you
network.
have the time. You're pretty busy.
We do this for free. We don't get paid for this. Like we do this as a passion project.
Right.
But with this day and age, we can call people, on FaceTime, and we can video, we can record. So it's not like we have to travel all the time unless we have to. So I mean, like, there's no excuse to really not be able to network or reach out to people at this point. We're not on like a horse drawing carriage.
That's right.
3 days to get there.
Send a letter.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm so happy y'all are doing what you're doing. Like I said, as soon as I saw it, I was like, we got to talk because
Yeah.
I know your personality and how you are. I knew it was going to be a great conversation.
I'm a nut, yeah.
Yeah, well, in a good way. Though. In a good way. In a good way.
Grandma's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. She's grandma crazy. I dropped a link to your Facebook page in the comments below, so it'll be there for people, and it'll be linked on the audio side of things. Is there anywhere else we should send them other than to go out to the Seafood Museum in Biloxi and go check out the exhibit in person? Just if they want to stay up to date, what y'all are doing, Facebook's the way to do it.
Facebook's the way to do it, but I think we're starting our website. Jen's doing our website because some people don't have Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't have
Jen.
Facebook. Yeah.
Okay.
Jen's a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Hit us with those times again tomorrow.
Yeah.
4 to 6 p.m.
4 to 6.
4 to 6
Yeah,
p.m.
Maritime and Seafood Industry Museum in Point Cadet.
All right.
Yeah.
And then we also have at the very end of the reception, we have a lion dance. So if you have any kids,
Yeah,
definitely have them come out
yeah.
just to wrap it up.
I had 2 students who would
Yeah.
do that, the lion dance, and it's crazy,
Yeah.
man. The way they do that whole thing. It was
Yeah.
nuts.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank y'all for stopping by. Thank you for your time. I know you had a
Yeah. Thank
good
y'all
drive
for
to get
sure.
here today, so
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
Sorry
And,
you had to go down 49 so far.
Yeah, no.
yeah. Keep doing what you're doing and promoting the Gulf Coast. I mean, that's how I see it. It's just a beautiful part of this community and what we're all about down here on the Gulf Coast. So
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
anything we can help, just let us know.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you everybody for watching on live, tuning in, and on the audio side of things.